Hey, welcome to episode 7 of 25 levels of cutting boards, the last episode with 3 boards since the 2 next ones will have 2 boards each. Now the first board of this series is a chaos board. For those who don't know what that is, it's basically when you take all the scrap wood you can find from the previous 18 boards and make a new board from it. So believe me when I say there are a lot of different woods in there. I'd love to figure out if you can guess the complete list, so let me know in the comments which woods you think are present in the board. Now here I matched the different scraps I had by thickness and made 3 random boards from them that I later planed down to get a constant thickness and glued them together. Now fun fact, I wanted to get a thickness of about 50 millimeters, and it turns out I didn't measure anything until after the boards were glued, and I ended up having a thickness of 50.01 millimeters, so I got very lucky. Then came a series of 4 transformations. For the first one, I cut the board every 50 millimeters to get square sections. That allowed me to flip some of them by 90 degrees and get more randomness in the pattern. The second transformation was adding 5 15-degree cuts to the board, switching a few of the parts around while also adding 2 sapelli strips to add material. The third operation was the same thing with 6 30-degree cuts, also random, one of which goes through one of those 15-degree sapelli strips, and a total of 4 of which were replaced with new sapelli strips. The fourth and final operation was adding 2 vertical cuts, including one going through a 30-degree sapelli strip, not just for aesthetics and extra randomness, but also to make the board flat again, because I saw it was slightly curved, which can happen when you're gluing so many cuts together if you don't flip one out of 2 strips. I planed the final result down on the drum sander, and once it was ready, cut many strips of it to make an end grain pattern. Then I did all the finishing touches I usually do, including the chamfers and the sanding, but I decided to go against adding a CNC juice groove because I didn't want to ruin the detail in the board. So I just went straight to the oil and the feet for the board. The end result is a beautiful mess, and I gotta say there are 3 things I love about it. The combination of adjacent 15-degree and 30-degree cuts, especially where there are superposed sapelli strips, the appearance of the black palm in the middle, and the bow ties on the left of the board. This board was an insane amount of work, but the end result is wonderful. The second board of this video is the same concept as the basket weave board that I made in episode 6, except it is not straight but hexagonal as the name suggests, which adds a lot of complexity. Now you're probably watching the first few seconds of this video and wondering what the heck is he doing. Well, the thing is, I started out by making a jig to cut hexagons, which is part of the difficulty of this board. I started out by making a sled for the table saw on which I added a 60-degree plank on which to rest my parts when cutting them. Then using the router, I cut a groove for a screw to pass through and did the same thing on the other side of the board with a much larger groove to put in nuts. I used one of those square nuts from my CNC machine, which worked perfectly, and then I added a sliding piece that also had a 60-degree angle to be able to cut hexagons of any size. The first test was very conclusive, so I went onto the board and started out by cutting hexagons from an ash plank and made 12 of those. Then I made some parallelograms with double the edge length of the hexagons using the same jig, since it's more precise than my miter saw. And after all the parts were ready, I laid out the entire board on the table and traced the lines corresponding to the outside of the board, and cut the excess off using my bandsaw. Then I laid everything back on the table again and glued everything up with the same method as the basket weave board from episode 6, which uses an insane amount of glue, but nicely fills the gaps between the pieces, and when the cuts aren't perfect, and no cuts can be perfect, it helps. After sanding the board down to reveal the pattern, I trimmed the edges, chamfered them, sanded the board, added holes for the feet, and you guessed it, I added a CNC juice groove. But I couldn't stop there. You see, I used Purple Heart for this board, and I didn't want to leave the board out in the sun for weeks since I'm in the east of France and we don't have that at this time of the year. Luckily for me, I got contacted by an Italian company sponsoring this video who is called Tilswall that sent me a sample heat gun to try it out on the board. Now this heat gun costs about 40 bucks with free shipping, so I was expecting a really basic tool with 2 power levels, but this thing is actually awesome. You can actually choose between 6 temperatures in each power mode, and there are 2 power modes, so essentially you have 12 temperature choices. Also, it's written in Fahrenheit and Celsius, and I'm French and American, so I'm happy. I'm kidding, I use metric. And also it's got a fast cooling option, so when you're done using it, you can choose to shut it down immediately or cool it. Overall, it's a very intuitive and well thought out heat gun, which also came with some scrapers and nozzles, which are absolutely perfect for the Purple Heart because it's exactly the right size, and the color came out quickly and beautifully. I even made a Purple Heart pen with the scraps later on and used the heat gun to change its color on the lathe. So feel free to check out their website in the description. Now back to the board. Once the Purple Heart was actually purple, I oiled it down to reveal its colors and added the feet. The end result is a beautiful but frustrating board because I made a huge mistake in the layout and my OCD was severely tickled. But hey, you can't learn from mistakes if you don't make them, so no regrets. Now the final board of this video. The final board's so tedious. Now this is a patterned edge grain board, believe it or not, so I knew what I was getting into when I started making it. This board requires making different strips from ash tiger wood and sapelli, but there are so many different thicknesses, so many different lengths, that in the end you have to cut the planks down to 52 different sizes to make 4 boards of different lengths of 31 strips each. And each individual strip needs to be sanded down on the drum sander to get the exact same thickness as the other strips to avoid variations on the final board. It is a nightmare. And after those 4 boards are made, you can cut strips from them, and some strips are down to 4 millimeters wide, which is crazy small. Now for those who used to watch my Rubik's Cube videos a while ago, this is the same thickness as a layer of my 33 by 33 Rubik's Cube. Now once all of those strips are glued together after a very long glue up, I sanded the board down and added the finishing touches, except the CNC juice groove because it would be a shame to ruin the sheer amount of detail on that board. Now this board actually took about 10 hours of active work, not including gluing time, during which I made some pens for the Christmas market in December. Now the end result is a board I am very proud of and fond of because it looks gorgeous, and that wavy pattern is something I designed myself earlier on, and it took a few hours to get it just how I liked it. I have no regrets because this is the best board I have ever made in my eyes, and I'd love to get your opinion on it. Please let me know which of the 3 boards is your favorite, and I will see you guys soon in the penultimate episode of this series. Have a good one, and I hope you enjoyed this video.